We will go ahead with the interface. Usually they say that it contains unimplemented methods and constants. Like before Java 7, um, all the methods which was there inside an interface were abstract methods. But after Java 8, they started including something called as default methods, static methods, and I think Java 9 onwards we have private methods as well. um, in order to make sure that in inheritance we cannot have multiple inheritance, right? So in interfaces we can achieve that, unlike the classes. um, can we instantiate an interface? No, I can't instantiate an interface. I have to implement it. What I'll do initially, I'll start with normal interface, how it used to happen in our mm, Java 7, the earlier versions. I'll create one package. I'll name it as com.interfaces. Okay. In this, I'm going to create one interface. I'm going to name that interface as my interface. Okay. Now, in this, I'm going to give all methods, that is void add, void subtract, and void multiply, and void divide. So here, basically what happens is you need not use a keyword called as abstract because in interface by default, we know that all the methods are abstract. Now this used to happen in Java 7 and before, that we didn't have any implemented method, like default method or private method was not there. So this is how the interface would be. And in case if I want to implement it, we will not go with the inheritance, we'll go with the implementation. So what I'll do, I'll create one class in this package itself. I'll create the class and I'll name the class as my class uh, okay. It will have main method. Now here, you have to notice one thing. I have this interfaces, com.interfaces as package. Both the classes are there, one interface and one class. Both are there inside the com.interfaces package itself. Now, if I want to implement all the methods in the interface, what I'll do, I'll give here implements my interface. When I give that, you can see this red mark. I'm going to add unimplemented methods. So all the methods that was there in the interface, right, came along here. Okay. So basically what I'm going to do is I'll take int a is equal to 10, b is equal to 20, and this out sum is equal to, okay. Similarly, I'm going to apply it for subtraction. And for multiplication. And for quotient. Okay. Now I have to create an object of the class that you have, not the interface. You can't create an object of interface. You can create an object of a class, which has implemented that. So if I take OB is equal to new, you can take OB dot add, OB dot subtract, OB dot multiply, OB dot divide. Okay. Now if you run this, you'll notice all the functions getting displayed. Now, there was one concept called as static methods in the interface, and we also have default methods. We have private methods these days. So, how do I implement those? Like in case if I want to create a function, let us say void message. And in this message, I'm going to give it as calculator. Okay. But if you notice, it is not allowing you to do this. So I can make sure this whole function becomes a default method. Default method means now if you come to your class, that is the object, I can use this ob dot whichever method which is implemented, which we have named it as default, that is message, I can access it here. So if I give message, it will be available. So in the older versions before Java 8, this default method was not there. It had to be 100% abstract. All the methods should not have any implementation. But in Java 8 and above, they created what if I wanted to add some methods which is available for all the classes, which is in implementing my interface, let us say. At that point of time, it should be easier for all the objects to access. So we have a default method. Now, there is something called as a static method. Now, what do you mean by static method? Usually in the static classes and stuff, we used to have methods and we call it by the class name. Okay, we don't use the object, we call it by the class name. If in case here I had a function, let us say static void my data, something like this, and sys out static method. If I give something like this, now static method belongs to this interface called as my interface. So if you come here and if you try to access this my data, I'll give here ob dot my data. It is not showing here if you notice. So how do I access the static method? With the interface name, okay, dot, you can now get my data function. Now if I run this, you will be able to access that static method. Okay, whenever you are using the static method, you use interface name dot static method name. Okay, you will not do it with respect to object, you will do it with respect to interface name and then the static method name. But here, when it is default method, you can access it with the object dot default method name. Okay, there is no problem there. Now, what do you mean by private methods? So, if there are some helper methods, let us say, and when I say helper methods, that the method which is dependent on other. So in case if I'm going ahead with how in the classes we use some of the private methods, which will internally help you to calculate the area or perimeter or something like that. Mm, we can do the similar thing here. What I'll do is I'm going to create one private string get name method. Okay, that means I have to return a string value. This method is private, so the thing that I'm going to return is a string called as my interface. Okay, maybe here interface name is equal to. Now, as usual, your private methods cannot be accessed by um, any other, like even in the main class, if you have a normal class which has a private method, it cannot be accessed in the main function, right? So here, similarly, what we can do is, how can the access be made simpler is, you have a static my data method, right? I can just use it here, static method, and I'll call this function get name. If I'm trying to use it in static my data method, it will not allow, because why it doesn't allow is Usually, whenever you're using static method, you're taking interface and then calling my data, automatically it will be retrieved. Here, instead, what I'll do in the default method, I'll try to call that function. Here it will allow. So will the private method be allowed inside my data? No. Will a private method be allowed inside a default method? Yes. So what happens is a calculator will be printed and then probably I'll write some dot dot dot. After that, get name is returning a string. What is that string? Interface name is equal to my interface. So a calculator dot 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 interface name is equal to my interface. This much will be written there. We'll run this one. So this is coming from this private method. You can't access that in the static one. And obviously you cannot access it here. So if you give ob dot get name, you will not get the get name function in the main class. Okay. And this is with respect to interface.